Hi, I'm Vic Gatto, CEO of Jumpstart Foundry. Welcome to the Refinery. Today I'm going to talk about Healthcare 101, kind of introductory lesson about how the US healthcare system works. I'm going to cover 100 years of healthcare history, slightly more actually, in about 20 minutes. So we're going to go real quick through a bunch of history, so get a pen and keep up. Healthcare started in this country when we were building the railroad, Transcontinental Railroad. It was very dangerous work. Lots of people got hurt every day building the railroad. And in order to keep workers coming back, that's where healthcare got invented. So it was invented as accident insurance to help the people that were building the railroad. The first real insurance product was in the 1920s. Blue Cross Blue Shield created a prepayment, kind of like a layaway, where you would pay a little bit of money each week to the hospital nearby, and then when you got hurt, you had a stored up savings there and they would treat you. That is where Blue Cross Blue Shield started, and they're still doing insurance today. The source of employer-based healthcare actually started in World War II. The US government froze wages, and employers were not allowed to give people raises at all. And in order to attract or retain new workers, you literally could not give them a raise because the federal government wanted people building bombs and planes and guns and tanks. And so they created other benefits, and health benefit was the biggest one that they came on. So the reason that the US has employer-based health care and no other country in the world has that is really an abstract of history. In World War II, we created this kind of artifact where employers started giving employee benefits, health benefits, and it has never changed since then. In 1965, Lyndon Johnson signed the Social Security Act. It, of course, created Social Security, retirement benefits for all Americans, but it also created Medicare. So we would take care of your health needs in retirement as well as pension. And in that process, there was a small firm here in Nashville. As you know, Jumpstart is headquartered in Nashville. There was a small firm called HCA that lobbied to have for-profit health be allowed to bill the federal government. And that was accepted and put into the bill. So the first Medicare was allowed to be charged to for-profit companies. And 2 years later, HCA was formed here, the first for-profit healthcare company in the world here in Nashville. They still are the largest for-profit healthcare company in the world. And everything started here in Nashville and grew very quickly. Nixon expanded Medicare in 72. It expanded again in 80. And what was really interesting about this is that in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, it was a cost-plus model, which is really hard to think about today. But whatever the procedure was, the hospital had costs, of course. You have the doctor, you have the nurse, you have gauze, you have the stay in the room. And whatever the cost was to do heart surgery or fix a broken bone or deliver a baby, the federal government would pay that cost plus 20% for the hospital's profit. And so it was a great system if you are a for-profit company. The more you spent, the greater your profit margins were. Everyone's talking about bundled payments today. Bundled payments have been around forever. In 1982 was the first time the federal government started bundling payments. And this was when CMS, who runs Medicare, decided that is idiotic. We should not be rewarding inefficient, very expensive hospitals by paying them more profits. Let's set a price for each diagnostic code. So if you have heart surgery, you have pancreatic surgery, you have a broken leg, we will pay X dollars for that. And the hospital has to manage their own cost. So just like the rest of the world, they would pay $50,000 for heart surgery. If the hospital could manage their costs underneath that, then they would get to keep the difference. And so that made a lot more sense. It aligned incentives from the hospital to the federal government, and every other insurer took that on as well. That was the first time bundle payments in 1982. Nashville was the head source, the main place where for-profit was going on. As I said before, HCA was here. They were about 15 years old at that point. And you can see on the slide here, every one of those little yellow boxes that are hard to read is a spin-off from HCA. So when these DRGs, when these bundles came on, the for-profit business folks realized, gosh, if I get really good at heart surgery and I get efficient and get great outcomes and reduce my cost, I'll have really a lot of profits. And so in Nashville, there was a family tree of lots of spin-offs from the main hospital that has created the cluster here in Nashville that is the for-profit healthcare system. And so that has sort of lasted through the last 30 years and really been the result of what Nashville is today. Today, CMS, our federal government, Medicare, those are all the same thing. They pay for about half, slightly over half of all healthcare spending in the US. This is about $1.8 trillion every year, trillion, so that is $1,800 billion a year, and it's completely unsustainable. Here's a slide showing the growth over time. You can see as a percent of GDP, so the percent of the economy is growing dramatically. It's approaching 20% today. And of course, the economy is growing over time too, so it's a sort of double growth. Total, so the government pays for a little over half. Total is $3.4 trillion every year. It's a growth rate that's unsustainable, about twice the rate of inflation. The outcomes are pretty bad. So the US spends much more than any other country in the world. On a per capita basis, we spend a little over $10,000. The average developed country is around $4,300, so we're more than twice. And we have about 18-20% of our GDP. Most countries, of course, they have a much smaller economy than us, and so it's better if you take a percent of GDP. They're in the 6, 7, 8%. We spend double, triple times the amount of money in any way you would measure it, and yet we really do not have satisfactory outcomes. We are ranked 47th in quality of life, life expectancy, and health outcomes out of the world. And so we really are behind the curve, both in how much we spend and what the results are. And yet it's a mesh in our way of life. People would say that health is a human right, it's a US right, it's a citizen right, and we need to figure out how to solve this. So how did this happen? How did we get to this situation where we are today, where the amount of spending is really unsustainable, the outcomes are not great? How did we get here? The US is the best economy in the world, most efficient economy in the world. How is it true that healthcare is in this situation? So I would argue that we have great people, doctors, nurses, other healthcare providers, dedicating their life to helping others. They do great work, they really care about the patient, and they're doing the best they can. Unfortunately, the healthcare industry is optimized for the past. I love this image you see here of a little girl kind of longingly looking down the road backwards. That's where the healthcare industry is. The world has changed dramatically since 1965 when Medicare was created. Healthcare has sort of lost its way. So it is very well optimized for that 60s and 70s cost plus environment where you treated the patient, you did everything you could, and the people would pay you all your costs plus a little more for your profit. That no longer is the reality today. Healthcare is wandering out in the woods and is lost. We need to find our way home. So the reality is that exponential growth in technology has changed everything in the world in the last 50 years. You see here a chart of the cost of 1 gigabit of storage, and you could use 100 different examples of this. But 20 years ago, it cost $1 million to have 1 gigabit, and today it's under a penny. And so this is a reduction in cost. You could have an increase in performance. It's sort of the same thing. Technology has grown exponentially. There's been incredible advances in science. We have found cures for disease. We have great pharmaceuticals. We have great new medical devices, new techniques. And that is wonderful. It's really impacted how we treat disease. Unfortunately, human thinking, how we approach the world, how we process information is linear. So it's really difficult to understand the impact of this exponential growth unless you step way, 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 way back. So that's what we're going to do for a minute. We're going to take a 100-year perspective to try to understand how healthcare has lost its way. So 100 years ago, in 1919, the 3 largest causes of death were famine, disease, and war. So you didn't have enough to eat and you starved. You got the plague, you got the flu, and you died of disease. Or you're killed in a war, World War I. And the life expectancy was 50 years. So if you were a middle-class white male born in the US, you were expected to live to 50 years old. That was your average life expectancy. And 2/3 of the population was working in manual, very difficult manual labor jobs. Healthcare at that point was acute medicine. Let's intervene and fix the problem. Healthcare is very good at that. So if you're working in the field, you are on your farm, and you fall and break your leg, this care is very good. They are optimized for acute interventions. And here is a typical OR. There's 20,000 across the US, nurses and doctors fixing the problem with the patient. And they literally reach in and patch up your leg or patch up your heart. So today's perspective, 100 years later, where are we? Advances in science and technology and education have largely addressed the main causes of death. We don't have significant famine, disease, or war. Yes, I understand there are people that are hungry in the US. Certainly are there diseases. And yes, people die in wars, but not the same level. These are not anywhere close to the top 3 causes of death any longer. We have largely cured the major causes of death for our country in the last 100 years, which is a great thing. Life expectancy has changed dramatically. Life expectancy now, same middle-class white male in the US can expect to live to 77 years. And interestingly, we're down to 1 in 5, 21% of people are working in manual jobs. And so people are living 27 years longer, so you get another 50% of life, and it's a lot easier life. We have TV, we have the internet, we have a lot of fun things to do, and life is easy. That is great news. Unfortunately, it results in lots of chronic disease. So you do not get diabetes, type 2 diabetes. You do not get type 2 diabetes in 1919 if you don't have enough to eat and you're working 12 hours a day on the farm. You just don't get it. That is not a disease. And you die at age 50. So even if you do get slow in your old age, you pass away. So you don't get cancer. You don't get heart disease. You die of other causes. Today, we have made great progress. We should celebrate that. 27 years longer is impactful, and yet we have different challenges. Now we have chronic disease. Now we have cancer. Now we have heart disease. So the world has changed. Healthcare has to change as well. And so there are 3 trends that are really changing the world today that are someday, I think in the next 5 to 10 years, going to change healthcare. The first is technology. It is incredible that this is the only industry where I cannot pay my bills online. Why is it that you cannot even understand what you owe or pay online? I can do that with every other business. I can't do it with healthcare. Don't tell me that it's privacy and data security. My bank records need to be very secure, and I can do everything online. It's also the only industry where I can't talk to anyone. I can't manage my account. I can't get my records. I can't get a second opinion. It's the only industry where we are still faxing things around. Who uses fax anymore? And so the tech titans, Amazon, Apple, and Google, are entering the space. All 3 have entered healthcare in the last 12 months, and they are going to disrupt the healthcare industry. They fully understand how to leverage technology. They understand exponential technology. They understand mobile, social, cloud, AI. They have the brand and the network power to move into new markets. They're coming into healthcare. They're global. They're more powerful than most countries. And they treat customers and employees very well, opposite of healthcare. Healthcare, they assume the patient has to come to us. The big tech titans really take care of the customer and they take care of their employees. And the reason they do that, because they understand that they have incredible market power and the US government will break them up if they don't take care of customers and employees. And if they do, they can make lots of profits because everyone is happy. So they have systematically disrupted every other market in the world, and they're coming after healthcare right now. Just some quick examples. Amazon, it has Prime membership with 67% of US households, and it's the rich 67%. So 2/3 of US households are Prime members, giving all their data, their buying data, their e-commerce data, their lifestyle data to Amazon. There are 100 million Alexa devices out in the market. And Amazon has announced they're going to subsidize their healthcare margins to gain control and market share in healthcare. Google controls the one algorithm that decides everything in the digital world. 93% of search, a lot of it health-related searches, is done on the Google search engine. That is 3 billion searches a day. Google is learning about what is out, what are you asking for, what's out there, and then they are directing you to where to get it solved. Then Apple. Apple has the highest brand loyalty of any brand in the world, and they're leveraging their wearables, particularly their watch, to enter into health. The tech titans, technology is going to really change this marketplace. The second big trend is demographics. We have two big trends going on in demographics that are really going to change the healthcare space. First is the boomers. There are 77 million boomers aging. In the next 10 years, they're going to be an average age of 73. Somewhere between 70 and 75 is where you really start to get sick and have a lot of health needs, a lot of health costs. They do not have a lot of savings. They're going to rely on Medicare to be their source of health care. At the same time, you have the millennials coming up. There are 83 million millennials. Their average age in the next 10 years is going to be 33. They will control voting. They're going to control companies. They're going to control government. They are very comfortable with technology. They're comfortable with getting their data out there on the internet, and they're going to drive change through the healthcare industry. Millennials are very comfortable with their smartphones. There are 1,000 millennials that did a survey, and it was really interesting. 87% of these millennials, the smartphone never left their side. They had it all day and they slept with it. 90% reach for the smartphone first thing in the morning, and then 78% spend more than 2 hours a day actively on their smartphone. So millennials are going to use mobile and use technology to change every industry, including healthcare. Here's a slide about the workforce. You can see millennials are already 35% of the workforce, and it's growing dramatically. They're going to make all the decisions for our country over the next 10 years. Here are several brands that have built just for millennials. They've been very successful. Companies like Airbnb and Upwork, they have designed their system mobile first and technology first to the millennial generation and had incredible success. And the third factor is consumerism, what we call at Jumpstart the rise of the consumer. Consumers are taking control of decision making. They're trying to understand, what do I need to do? Where should I get a second opinion? What is this going to cost me? And the reason is this chart. So most people will say the US economy has been great the last 10 years or so. Since the Great Recession, we've had a pretty good run. I'm getting better and better wages, and the price of things is not really changing. Housing, food, transportation, they're growing at 1%, 0%, because technology and globalism is reducing the cost of lots of things. And that is true except for healthcare. Over the last several years, healthcare has grown, the cost of healthcare has grown at 11% per year. And at that rate, no family, I don't care what your net worth is, if something's growing at 11% a year, you have to budget for it, you have to start getting control of it. The other piece is that you cannot solve chronic disease. You can't take care of your diabetes. You can't take care of heart disease. You can't quit smoking unless you engage the patient. So the patient cannot be asleep on the table. The doctors and nurses have to teach me and work with me and encourage me and incent me to change my behavior so that I'm healthier and live a longer life. And so we have to help people with behavior change, which is going to involve education and psychology and training. So the next 100 years, what's going to happen? Why is it that we're not hiding under the bed? How can Jumpstart be optimistic with all of these chaotic things going on? First of all, we don't think the government will help. The government is not going to be helpful in this at all. We have two parties, both of which are trying and both of which are pretty inept. So the Affordable Care Act was not affordable for really anyone. You can see this chart. Hospital margins are below zero, so it means most hospitals are losing money. And then there's several quotes here. I won't go through them all, but every insurance plan is suffering and having losses based on the ACA. But then you go to the Republican side. Repeal and replace is a cool slogan, but there is nothing to replace. They have no idea of what to do next. We're calling it mass confusion. Right? So it's fine to throw stones at one side, but there's no solution in place. And so the industry has to innovate. Some early leaders here. There are some early leaders. You have Cleveland Clinic, Intermountain, Geisinger. Then some startups like Bright Health and Oscar, and IBM Watson is doing some interesting things around artificial intelligence. There are some early leaders, but in general, most traditional healthcare executives don't know what to do. They're not used to innovation and they need help. Like those kids lost in the woods, they know that they're lost, they know they need a solution, but they really don't know where to take the first step, which direction to go. They need assistance to find innovation. This has been studied for over 30 years. A guy at Harvard named Clayton Christensen coined the term the innovator's dilemma, and it really is about the idea that incumbents, large established companies that are dominant in their space, they cannot innovate disruptively. They don't have the incentives, they don't have the vision, they don't have the creativity, they don't know how to do it. It always is an entrepreneur, an innovator, a young startup that comes in and finds a solution and grows very quickly and shows the way. Innovation is hard. It's very difficult to successfully innovate. That's where Jumpstart comes in. So I'm going to quickly talk about Jumpstart here and our sister company, Health Further. We match great innovations with the industry players that really need help. Jumpstart Foundry is an assembly line for innovation. We've done 68 so far. We do 15 to 20 a year. I love this picture here. You can see the Honda jet assembly line. They're building executive jets, custom executive jets, but they're doing it in an assembly line fashion. So it's totally custom to what you want, but they're doing it at mass scale. Jumpstart does the same thing. All of our innovations we invest in, 68 so far, doing 15 to 20 every year. They all are special, unique, great innovations with really strong teams building something that's wonderful. They're unique, and yet we come at them and help them in a scalable assembly line process. It really has three parts. The first part is starting with the industry. We call it industry first innovation because we start with the industry. What do they need? What do the large for-profit hospitals need? What do the insurance companies need? What is the federal government looking for? What are employers looking for? We create a wish list from the industry every year that they're looking to solve. Then we go around the country and evaluate several thousand startups every year. What are they doing? What's happening out there? What are they building? What solutions are they creating that's really exciting? We then match those together and pick the best 20 so that we know we have a great solution and we have an industry customer that wants this thing solved. Then the last step is we help them grow. You're in the refinery. The refinery is our platform to help you grow and mature through a milestone-based system so that you know what to work on when, and we support you in that journey through the process of building your idea into a great company. Our sister company is Health Further. It gives us really exciting access and insight into what the industry is looking for. They have done a lot of research over what are they looking for now and the timing of things. So in healthcare, it's really important to get the timing of innovation correct. What is ready to be adopted by industry today and what is really 3-4 years down the road. You can see Marcus Whitney here. He's the president of Health Further. He was on stage at a recent event with Milton Johnson, the CEO of HCA, the largest company in the world, talking through changes, what's coming, what's going on, what's too early, where should we look right now. That's the kind of insight we get. And then of course we know all these people. So when you have an innovation that you want to get introduced to them, we know how to call them, we can get you a meeting with them. It's really powerful. Health Further, they are a separate business. They're a strategic advisory. So they get paid by industry to help them bring innovation to market and change their business. And so Jumpstart and Health Further is really a potent combination to bring innovation to the healthcare market for the next 100 years. Thanks for watching. Please go to jsf.co to learn more about what we do. I'm Vic Gatto. Appreciate it.